Good morning. This is John Lamb. I'm going live down here at Las Vegas Federal Courthouse. We will get you a quick update on the procedures of what's been going on so far today. We have had another interesting morning. It seems like every day something new is getting brought up. Hi, Lisa Bundy and Stephen. Hi, Melissa Knoll. We've got another good day going on so far. Hi, Kathy. We'll start out this morning. First thing, we spent most of the morning again arguing about objections and what was going to be allowed in this trial and what was going to be allowed to ask different witnesses. The prosecution announced the next 3 witness names. Some of these witnesses testified in previous trials. One of them is Terry Petrie, and then Agent Stover, and Agent Scally. There's 3 of the next witnesses that we're going to have. We didn't get our first witness till a little after 10:30 today because of all the objections and arguments brought up by the defense team, trying to get different information and evidence allowed in this courtroom. At first, the judge said that she's not going to allow a ton of information that the defense wants to bring up to prove Cliven Bundy's and these other defendants' innocence. And we spent all morning discussing whether the water rights were relevant, what was all relevant of all the prior procedures back in 1993 and such, and they were trying to just concentrate on just the events of April 12th, 2014. But we got a lot of this is going to be allowed in. One of the first things we started arguing about is the FBI threat assessment. This is something we've been dealing with for quite a few days. The FBI threat assessment, which was they said that the Bundys were safe. They didn't feel that there was any threat from the FBI. But there's another agency called the BUA report. It's a behavioral analysis, and that report said it was low to moderate, the threat level was, but the BLM still held their threat level at high. So with these new things that came in, the defense wants to argue and bring in the reason these men were not a threat, and how do they get this threat assessment? How do they get to such a high level? And why doesn't the jurors get to hear this? So there were several interesting points here, and we're going to get to allow a lot of that to come in. But the one thing the judge said is that she is not going to allow Cliven Bundy to introduce parts of statements that are self-serving. She says that a defendant might make statements to help himself in the future, and so she's not going to allow self-serving statements of Cliven Bundy's to be allowed. Mr. Whipple argued that Rule 106 applied here. He says we want the entire portion heard. We have the right to have the whole truth heard, not just part of it. It is violating Mr. Bundy's 5th Amendment right, and is limited against Mr. Cliven Bundy, and is going to force him to testify. And he says that violates his 5th Amendment right by forcing him to testify in his own defense, because other evidence cannot be brought in unless it's through his own testimony. And he said that's a violation of his 5th Amendment rights. So we've heard all kinds of violations of the Constitution throughout this trial. This was a new take on it that I had never realized, that if a defendant is forced to testify because he has a 5th Amendment right not to testify, if he's forced to testify in his own defense because of strategy that the prosecution forces him into, they're actually violating his 5th Amendment right that way also. So that was a very interesting point. One of the interesting big things that came up, I'll just jump to this real quick, was one of the assistant prosecutors, her name is Nadia Omed, and it has not came up in court. We've heard rumors of this in the past, but Nadia Omed was present at the 2014 standoff out there at the Bundy Ranch. There's pictures of her being there. There's meetings that she was associated with, and it sort of came through with Dan Love. Dan Love mentioned that he had spoke to her before they had left, and this same prosecutor sits in the courtroom every day, and she's prosecuting this case. She was also on the grounds, and at that time we didn't know what she was, whether she was a prosecutor or what she was, but we found out today what her job was when she was out there. She worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office as an attorney for the Department of Interior. So the Department of Interior had an attorney on the ground, and that attorney that was on the ground is now sitting in there prosecuting all these defendants from day one. Prosecuted Eric Parker, Scott Drexler, Todd Engel, all these guys, even Greg Burleson. They did not get a fair trial by the information I heard here in court. These last 6 defendants absolutely did not get a fair trial. There was a conflict of interest, and Mr. Whipple said it was a total setup from the very beginning. He said this in court today, that the Bundys were set up, and it was, see his exact words here that he said. He said that that the BLM and the Department of Interior set this up from the very beginning and set my client up. And he said that's entrapment. And this case ought to be dismissed not only on that alone, because of the members of the prosecution team being at the Bundy Ranch from day one, even as being involved as far back as 2012, 2 years prior to 2014, Nadia Omed was present in meetings and depositions and other types of forms of litigation in this. This here was big news today, and even Ryan Bundy stood up and said with this new evidence, this case should be dismissed immediately. And the judge is still continuing to allow this to proceed, even with this new evidence. We are not allowed to object to objections like we were before, so the defense and the prosecution both have to be very cautious about any objections. These objections have to be litigated before or after each witness. So it's been very difficult to bring up certain points when a witness is overstepping its bounds, or someone who is questioning that witness gets stepping out of their bounds. It's a very touchy ground to tread on here. Mr. Bundy, a statement was made by him. He said, "It's not very funny when I had 52 neighbors and now I have no neighbors, no ranchers, I stand alone." That was a statement that was made by Mr. Whipple today. He said these prosecutors are making fun of him, and it's not very funny. The witness that's been brought up today, he's an attorney. This attorney's name is Terry Petrie. He's from Colorado. He works for the federal government. His whole job is to litigate and file papers on behalf of the federal government for pollution, for fish and wildlife, BLM, land management type litigations. So he's a professional witness. His whole testimony up until we quit here just before I came out, most all of it was read. He read depositions that Cliven Bundy had given back in 2001, I'm thinking it is. It's quite a while back. He was reading depositions word for word. This witness, he would read what he said, and Mr. Sheese, Daniel Sheese, the prosecutor, would pretend that he was Cliven Bundy, and he was reading Cliven's own words in a deposition. Mr. Whipple at one time got up and he walked over to Daniel Sheese and he whispered something into his ear, and then he walked back to his seat trying not to object. but then he did make an objection to the judge publicly in front of the jurors, and he asked that Daniel Schiess not try to put meaning into it, try to talk in a mellow tone voice, so that he didn't try to make it sound that Cliven Bundy was speaking roughly or rudely back when he was reading these transcripts off. But that was pretty much the whole witness, was just reading different transcripts and court documents. No actual testimony at all. Nothing of a fact except for what was in transcripts from years ago. The corruption here, Whipple wants to know, he says, goes very deep, not only to Harry Reid, but to members of the U.S. Attorney's Office. He said, with these people being present, he said, as far back as 2012, Mr. Bundy was definitely set up. He said, this is a case of entrapment. And that's pretty much where we have left off so far this morning. This witness has not been cross-examined by any of the defense team yet. The prosecutor, Daniel Schiess, just finished with this witness moments ago, and when we go back in, the defense team is going to cross-examine this witness on the stand. This witness was used just to show, supposedly, Cliven Bundy's state of mind. His it's only to go to it's been going to just Cliven Bundy, and it's not supposed to incriminate none of the other defendants. But as you know, when things are brought up like this, the jurors are seeing the whole picture, that they can use this witness for any purpose they want to. One more point here that was brought up multiple times a day, that Daniel Schiess, the prosecutor, is afraid that if any of the defense team says anything out of line, it's going to cause jury nullification in this case. And he keeps stressing the point that we can't allow these statements of the Bundys that make them look innocent in this trial, because it could cause jury nullification. He said we can't take that chance here. So he's trying to shut the defense up, just like in the last two trials, try to limit them what they're allowed to say and what they're allowed to ask these witnesses. But we'll see how it goes today. I know that Mr. Whipple, he has been right on. He is fighting hard. He's one of the hardest fighting attorneys so far that we've had on this case, and he's not going to sit by idly and let this thing go by. So we'll have you another update tonight. We've just barely really begun today with all the motions and arguments we've heard. So we'll have you a full update tonight as soon as court's out. It should be really close to 5 o'clock when we're out. The judge said she's not going to allow us to go longer like we normally have been. So stay tuned. We'll keep you updated as soon as we know what's the next step here. Thank you, everybody, and God bless. Well, good evening, everyone. We're down here still at the Las Vegas Federal Courthouse. Today makes day 9 with jury trial. And we have had a long, eventful day again today. So we will get you some updates here. Here in a little bit, hopefully before I'm done, Andrea Parker and Kelli Stewart, they are over in Seattle, Washington. They're going to have an update for us over there just shortly. They had court. Hello, Don, Kevin, Aaron, Khan, how you doing? Glad to see everybody here. What we're going to talk about today pretty much is what the whole case has been about. We've had, how deep does this corruption go? We've been talking to you guys about what all has been left out of the discovery, the government hiding evidence, such as the cameras, the snipers on the hill. We went over and over this kind of stuff. The government just released some emails to the defense team. These emails have a lot of redacted stuff in them, so it's hard to read all this redacted stuff. But in these emails, they cannot be read publicly in court. The prosecution is only allowing parts of this to be heard But with this new email stuff, new evidence of redacted or new of discovery that has been left out all along has been just come out again. So it's pretty interesting. One of the biggest things that is real interesting in this case here in Las Vegas is that one of the members of the prosecution team, Nadia Omed, has been on this prosecution team in the last 2 trials. She's one of the prosecutors. She's one of them that prosecuted the last 2 groups. She was involved with the Department of Interior as an attorney back in 2012, 2 years prior to this case coming about. She was not a prosecutor at that time on a federal level, prosecuting this case, but she was on the Department of Department of Justice, DOJ. And what one of the defense attorneys wants to point out today is that this definitely shows an intent to entrap, to set up these defendants from day one, way before 2014, that they was building a case against Mr. Bundy. They wanted to lock him up. So there's evidence to point to that. The prosecution keeps saying things like, we don't have nothing to hide, Your Honor. We are trying to, we'll release it if we know about it. The FBI hasn't disclosed any of this stuff to us. So we don't know of any of these emails. We didn't know about these cameras. We didn't know about the snipers until just now. All this stuff is new to us. And so there's so much stuff like that kind of stuff. Let me go to a couple of things. So we're still on the same witness, Mr. Petrie. He's an attorney, and his client is the BLM. So he works for the federal government. He handles cases for the federal government. He's a federal prosecutor, a federal attorney, not a prosecutor, a federal attorney hired by the federal government to represent his clients, which is the BLM, environmental offices, OSHA, different things like that on a federal level. Them are his clients. That's who he represents. And the conflict of interest here is Mrs. Nadia Omed worked with Mr. Petrie way back in 2012 when he started litigating the case with Mr. Bundy. She would be on phone calls with Mr. Petrie and other attorneys when they was trying to kick off Clive and Bundy off the ranch, getting rid of the cows. It seems like definitely a conflict of interest for sure, and it also appears to be an entrapment type case. The defense team has a good case and good evidence to bring that up. What we did learn today too is the federal government stated under oath that the federal government doesn't recognize state law. So when they're talking about the cows and the grazing rights and the water rights, they said they did not need a warrant or any court order to evict these trespass cows off of the federal lands. I think I have, let me see here, I'm going to add Kelli Stewart now. We're going to go with an update with her in Seattle, and I'll finish this update here. See if we can get her on here. We're going to bring Kelli Stewart and Andrea Parker on if it works here. They're in Seattle, Washington right now. And I'm not for sure if I can do this or not. We're trying to add them.
You have to have a long arm for
Sorry.
that.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi, guys.
Good to see you.
And we're here, Kelli Stewart and Andrea Parker in Seattle for Schuyler's release hearing. Gosh, this is kind of awkward to hold. Here, come over here real quick. So do you want to keep going with your live feed, and then we will just sit down.
Sit down.
We will just talk as you want us to, or how do you want us to do that? Sorry, John.
Let's let you get an update if you want what's going on there in Seattle.
Okay,
I know
well, people have been together. I'm totally cutting off my head. People have been together all day. Melina's here. There's a great group here of people. They've been together all day since this morning, just hanging out here. And Schuyler right now is giving us an entire rundown on his charges and what he came to learn about the law through this process. And it's pretty intriguing to listen to everything he's learned about the law in this process. And I think the main thing he's learned is that the law is very complicated, and it's not something that the average everyday person can just understand. You almost have to hire an attorney if you want to do anything out of the ordinary, like build a gun, because it's so complex and it's so complicated. You just don't know when you're about to break the law.
And also that he, writing his own motions, because he went through a lot of what we're seeing people who go through in Nevada, where they're appointed a lawyer, that lawyer's not doing what you want, or not doing anything at all, not communicating. So it sounds like he went through 3 different lawyers and was working on his own behalf, and he ran into case law and things of where you're in the courtroom and the law is basically decided by other cases. A lot of what we're seeing go on happen down in Nevada, and the law's written with a bunch of loopholes that they can use against you at your will. And so, we're already set up as people against the system because it's not explained to us properly. It's written out that only lawyers can understand, so you're not able to understand it. And then there's so many loopholes that they're like, yeah, you abide by this part, but this over here you haven't, and we're going to turn around and do that against you. We saw this morning, we showed up at CTAC, and they were letting some people park in the parking lot, and other people weren't allowed to park in the parking lot. And as soon as Schuyler's mom got there, they told us we all had to go. And so definitely a different atmosphere. When we parked in the parking lot, there was a gentleman walking around the parking lot with a shotgun that let us stay there for a couple minutes, and so that we could get Schuyler outside. And we spent the whole day with him, kind of going from place to place so other people can come, and it's absolutely been amazing.
Well, that sounds good. I bet you he's glad to be out. This is his first day out today, so some fresh air, getting to hug his mom, and having so much support there. That's awesome.
Absolutely. We're going to see if we can bring it in and have him say...
He's been kind of iffy on the live.
Okay. He's actually not wanting to go on the live stream as of yet. When these guys first get out, it's still like, you're out of prison, but you have all of these rules and regulations. You don't know how everything's going, and so it's difficult. There's a lot of time it takes to kind of get back into the swing of things, and so he's going to take that time.
Well, that sounds great. I guess, how are you and Eric doing? I know a lot of people probably want to know.
We're, happily, Eric's mother lives here in Seattle, and so we're here for a couple days, and we're going to be down in Reno visiting with my family for Thanksgiving. It's really great. So many family want to see us, and we're getting back to it, but I can tell you I miss all you guys down in Nevada, and I'm definitely missing everyone there. Here, you want to come and sit down and say hi. We've got Eric who's just saying, how are we doing?
Hi, Eric.
Hey, John.
Hi, brother.
How you doing?
Good to see. I'm doing good. Good to see you. I'm glad that you're not in this courtroom this time.
Yeah, it's nice. So am I.
I miss you, but I'm glad you're where you're at.
Yeah, I need to see you too. I miss you too. Thanks everybody for the support.
I tell you what. You're welcome anytime. I stand behind you 100%. So.
Yeah, you always have. I love you, brother.
Love you too. I tell you what, we've had some interesting things here. If we had the evidence that has been brought into this case so far, you wouldn't have had a case last time. You got deprived. You didn't have a fair trial. And we're seeing that right now with everything that's getting brought in because of Clive and Bundy, and the Bundys should have had their trial first, because we wouldn't have had any more trials after that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it was 11-1 to acquit. If that one person would have seen the snipers surrounding the house, and all the things we wanted to talk about that we weren't allowed to, it very possibly and most likely would have swayed that one one juror. But that's not the way it worked out, and we'll wait for this one to come through and see if there's anything we can do about it. But I don't think there is.
Hopefully there won't have to be a third trial, though. They only put these guys first because they wanted convictions before they went into the Bundy trial.
That didn't work too well, did it?
No, it didn't. After what happened in Oregon, they thought, it'd be easy to get convictions on the gun charges. And what these guys did was so right, based on what the government was doing, that they could not even get convictions with an unfair trial and the scary guns.
Well, this time, they're allowing all of that to be brought in at the very first. The jurors got to hear everything in opening statements. They got to hear about the snipers, the guns, the video cameras. They seen Margaret Houston getting thrown to the ground. All in the very first day, the jurors got to see all of this. We're in day 9 now, and we're only on our second witness. It's been a struggle to get to here. It's really interesting to see how it's unfolding. It's going slow, but we're getting a lot of progress each day.
That's good. It does go slow. They like to talk.
Yes, they do. And this time, what we've had this time, because of so much evidence that has been allowed to be in, the defense is actually questioning the witnesses longer than the prosecutors. So we still have, Mr. Whipple is still cross-examining our second witness, and he's been at it for several hours this afternoon, and we're still not finished. He's not with that witness. So we're going to continue with that second witness tomorrow.
Wow.
That's good. He needs to just hammer away. Keep driving nails.
Yes, he does. And then the judge yesterday made a ruling that they couldn't make no more objections in front of the jurors. Well, the defense did that today. They didn't make any objections in front of the jurors, but the prosecutors have been objecting over and over again in front of the jurors. And Mr. Whipple keeps reminding them, well, I thought your ruling was, Your Honor, that we wasn't going to object in front of the jurors. And he says this in front of the jurors.
That's good. So, he needs to call them out. That's good.
He does.
What did she do to them? Did she start getting on them for doing that in front of the jurors?
She didn't. She kind of brushed it to the side and says, well, just rephrase your statement, Mr. Whipple. Just rephrase it. And then he would object to that. They've got Mr. Sheese this time. Daniel Sheese is a new prosecutor. So this Daniel Sheese has been the main one speaking so far. And he'll object to what the judge just ruled. So it's very interesting. It's been a slow, hard process to get anything out of the witness, but we're getting there.
Well, what I've always said is any lie will fall apart the more questions that you ask. And it sounds like these lawyers are definitely asking the questions.
Yes, they definitely, and the jurors are asking questions too. So we get that opportunity again for the jurors to ask the witness questions. And it's just like last time. It's really revealing. We can see what these jurors are thinking. And so far, it's looking really good.
That's good.
That was my favorite part, was the jury questions. I at first thought that was going to be a bad thing. And I'm so glad that they are continuing that into this trial, because it means the most.
It does. It does. It is a more relaxed courtroom this time. The defendants are allowed to talk to each other. They actually turn around and they look at us in the audience observing. So she hasn't actually did anything to any of the defendants inside the courtroom at all this time. She's allowed them a lot more freedom than what Eric and Scott and Stephen and Ricky had,
Yeah, they see the error in their ways of they're trying to act benevolent and nice in front of the jury, and they realize that they may have had something to do with those decisions made by the jurors last time.
Definitely. Well, I'm glad you guys got to see Schuyler out over there, and that's always a rejoiceful moment when one more guy gets out. We can tick him off of our list for guys in jail.
Absolutely. There's good days and bad days, and when the prosecution is going down there, sometimes those days can be bad, and it's days like today up here with Schuyler that really get us to continue going through this, because sometimes it can be very difficult.
Yes, that's right. Well, do you all have anything else to say?
I'm going to let Kelli step in again here for a second. Did you have something else?
I don't think I have anything else to add, and those two look really cute in front of the camera, so I'll just let you them.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, guys.
Well, if that's it, yeah, thanks a lot. If that's it, I'll sign off, and I'll look forward to seeing you sometime soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See you again soon, John.
We love you.
Thanks. See you later.
Bye, guys.
Okay, guys, that's Andrea Parker and Eric Parker, and also Kelli Stewart over in Seattle, Washington. Schuyler got released today, so that was good news. They're all over there spending some time with him, and so it's I'm really happy for their family. Schuyler got time served, and his time ended today from his plea agreement that he agreed to back in his trial. So he is officially released. We do have court tomorrow again. We are starting early here because of some of the objections and arguments that were here in court. So we start at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. The jurors are not coming in at least until 9 o'clock. The prosecution has been objecting to a lot of stuff today, trying to keep a lot of evidence in. They do not want nothing about the water rights mentioned. In this case here in Las Vegas, they say it has nothing to do with the case. It's irrelevant. So they're trying to keep out a lot of stuff. The prior court civil matters about trying to get the cows trespass stuff off of the land. They're trying to object to a lot of those questions. And right now we are just on our second witness in 9 days. We picked the jurors. It took us 3 days. Between all the motions and other court hearings we had, we're on day 9 here, and we're only on the second witness here. So this case is progressing very slowly, and we're already in the middle of November here, and we were supposed to start this case, if you remember right, back October the 10th. So we're a month and a half past the day we were supposed to start. So if this case continues, it looks like we're going to be at least to the end of February or into March before it's over with the way it's going at this moment. But we hope not, but that's what they're saying. Other than that, like I said earlier, the big news is this information that came out about Mrs. Nadia Omed, one of the assistant prosecutors that has sat in this courtroom prosecuting the last 2 trials and this trial, along with Stephen Myrie and Daniel Sheese. She was working for the Department of Justice, Department of Interior, back in 2012. And she was on the ground on 2014 at the Bundy Ranch, meeting with the FBI, meeting with the BLM. And Mr. Whipple says this is definitely a case that looks to him like it's been set up. It's an entrapment case at the very least. And so we're going to see where this goes. We have a lot of arguments in the morning to figure out where we're going to go tomorrow. But so we'll have you some more updates tomorrow on all this. I've got one announcement. I got Ken Rhodes with me again. Ken Rhodes talked to, was it Morgan Philpott?
Yeah, Morgan.
Morgan Philpott today. And Morgan Philpott and Rick Kerber come all the way from Salt Lake City. They are helping Ammon Bundy. These are not paid attorneys like the other attorneys here are. The rest of them are attorneys that are being paid by the federal government. They're government attorneys. And these he's an attorney that's fighting for Ammon Bundy. Ammon Bundy requested that he be a part of this. He needs financial support to keep going here. Just to be out of town, it costs thousands of dollars for him to be here. And how you can donate to Ammon Bundy is AmmonBundyDefense.com. And Ken wanted me to remind you that. I'll let Ken talk just a minute because he's the one who's been bringing this up. There you go, Ken.
Okay. And, just go to AlmonBundyDefense.com because Morgan Philpott's not getting paid one penny except what people donate. So he does need the money. You know, he's doing, and this guy is a fighter. I feel like we got a very good, all the attorneys are working together here. They're helping each other and everything. So I think that we will win this case. I don't see any reason why we won't. And also, I'm sitting in John's car with him. I looked at his speedometer. He's got 179,000 miles on it. If y'all got any extra money, John refuses to ask. But when the car breaks down, I've seen him get up at 4 in the morning, go to the airport, take people and drop them off, pick them up, because everybody calls John when they need a ride from the airport. So he does need fuel, and I know I asked for him the other day, and I'm going to ask again for you. So if any of you got any extra money, please send it to John also. Thank you.
Thanks a lot there, Ken. So Ken Rhodes, I seen a comment on here that came on here that said the Orange Hat Man. So Ken Rhodes, he was at the Bundy Ranch on the 14th there of or April 12th, 2014. He actually fell down the embankment there.
Right.
And he's a potential witness in this case. He is supposed to testify at some point. He actually testified in one of the last trials, but it never got admitted in front of the jurors. So we're hoping this time that his testimony be used. Last time, the government tried to strike his testimony. They did not want it heard. But this time, he has a good chance to testify. We have a long list. There was 1,245 potential witnesses on this list this time. We know we won't near use all of those witnesses, but we expect to use a lot. I would guess you 40 or 50 witnesses at least if we can get those in. We're on the second government witness, and we have 2 to 3 more witnesses we're going to try to shove in tomorrow or Wednesday, but we don't know yet. We'll see. But we'll be back here tomorrow at 8 a.m. in the morning, give you another update at noon. So join us again tomorrow, and we'll see what happens for tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow.